Donald Trump just explicitly threatened Elon Musk and called him crazy, and it's getting uglier by the minute, with Musk now openly tying Donald Trump to the Epstein files and co-signing a tweet that said Trump should be impeached. New bombshell updates on Luigi Mangione, and the New York City mayor's race, while local just exposed a lot about the future for the Democrats and the country as Cuomo and Mamdani went at it. We're talking about all that and much more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show, you daily dive into the news. But first, we haven't done this in a while, but yesterday y'all took to the comments and said you can't elect a clown and then get angry when the circus comes to town is a banger-ass quote that has to be put on a shirt, with just that one comment getting over 1,000 likes, so okay, I'm calling your bluff, Big Dave. Right now at beautifulbastard.com, link in the description, you can get your You Can't Elect a Clown and then get angry when the circus comes to town tee and or hoodie. And I'll even give you that sleek minimal look along with this loud and bold version to see which one wins. You know what? If you snag it within the first 10 hours, you can get it for $10 off. But with that said, there is a lot to talk about today, starting with this. So I was wrong. I'll admit that, because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are now openly taking huge shots at one another. Like, this doesn't look like the end of the honeymoon phase. This looks like they went straight to divorce. And I just did not see that happening, at least for a few years. Like, when you drop over $200 million to get a guy elected, you think, okay, they're gonna be on the same page. Right now, what we're seeing is a lot of it boiling down to the fact that Musk is just not happy about Trump's big, beautiful bill and how much it'll increase America's debt. Because as we've talked about, some estimates claim that it'll go up by $3 trillion. With Musk then calling the bill a disgusting abomination and writing yesterday, this spending bill contains the largest increase in the debt ceiling in US history. It is the debt slavery bill. And that, I mean, it's just a small taste of what he's been throwing out there. Musk has been nonstop posting about this for the past 24 hours. And while Trump had largely remained silent, it appears that it had gotten under his skin, with him now saying things like,
"You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk. And even with the black eye, I said, do you want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, no, I don't think so, which is interesting. Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore.
With Trump then going on to add,
they picked him. I would have won Pennsylvania. I won it by a lot. But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here. Better than you people.
One of the things that was wild is that while Trump was doing that, Elon was actually replying, right? Writing things like, without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude. Trump then went on to claim that Musk was only mad about the bill because EV spending was cut and that would cost him billions of dollars, to which Musk replied, whatever, keep the EV solar incentive cuts in the bill, even though no oil and gas subsidies are touched. Very unfair, but ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in the bill. In the entire history of civilization, there has never been legislation both big and beautiful. Everyone knows this. Either you get a big and ugly bill or a slim and beautiful bill. Slim and beautiful is the way. You then also had Trump claiming that none of this should have been a surprise to Musk.
He knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody. And he never had a problem until right after he left.
However, you had Musk denying knowing anything about the bill and pointing out that it was released and passed so fast that even members of Congress didn't read it. And, you know, now we're at the stage where Musk is digging up old Trump tweets and reposting them, where you had Trump criticizing large spending bills and writing things like, wise words. And where is the man who wrote these words? Was he replaced by a body double? Where is this guy today? And then, in classic Elon Musk fashion, he put out a poll about whether to start a new political party that represents the 80% in the middle, which, hey, I think would be a very, very interesting test. Though I'm not even sure Musk's vast wealth could break the two-party system in the United States. With all that said, as far as the here and now, we're gonna have to wait to see where this goes, but just give my opinion. I am personally gonna just sit back, get some popcorn, and enjoy the show, because this looks like it's gonna get so nasty. I mean, literally, as I filmed that line, Donald Trump just put out, the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. And adding, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, and he just went crazy, which was followed by Musk dropping possibly the biggest bomb he could, writing, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. He then also added that because Trump threatened to cancel Musk's government contracts, SpaceX was going to start decommissioning Dragon spacecraft immediately. Not to mention that he's been making statements like agreeing that Trump should be impeached and replaced by Vance, or that Trump's tariffs will lead to a recession this year. This drama has also led to Tesla's stock plummeting, and for his part, Trump added that he doesn't mind Elon turned against him, but he should have done so months ago. And at the same time, Trump's allies have been lashing out. Steve Bannon, of course, course, has long been critical of Musk, and now he's demanding that Musk actually be deported because he thinks that Musk lied to stay in the US, which actually isn't a new claim because it's long been suspected that Musk worked on his company in the 90s rather than being a student like his visa required. So yeah, buckle up. Enjoy the ride, and in the meantime, let me know your thoughts in those comments down below. But then, next up today, in big breaking Luigi Mangione news, we may have finally learned about the motivation behind the alleged assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Because while his manifesto had already been leaked by a single journalist and was unconfirmed, and in that you saw things like him claiming that this was all pretty trivial to plan out and involved some basic social engineering. But now you have New York prosecutors releasing notes that they say Mangione wrote that make his motive even less in doubt, and it's longer than what was initially leaked. With Mangione allegedly writing things like, so you want to rebel against the deadly greed-fueled health insurance cartel. Do you bomb the HQ? No. Bombs equal terrorism. With him then appearing to go on to state that he definitely wanted to do the killing at the annual parasitic bean counter convention and adding, it's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence. Most importantly, the point is self-evident. The point is made in the news headline, insurance CEO killed at annual investors conference. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming, and adding to the feds, it had to be done. And you have the feds saying that these writings, they help their case a lot. They're saying it's essentially a self-snitch by Mangione if this writing is actually his, which is why the prosecutors have come out and said, if ever there were an open and shut case pointing to defendants' guilt, this case is that case. Simply put, one would be hard-pressed to find a case with such overwhelming evidence of guilt as to the identity of the murderer and premeditated nature of the assassination. With him then going on to add that Thompson was solely chosen because he was a symbol of what Mangione allegedly considered a deadly greed-fueled cartel. Right, and with all that, if all of that is true, you have many saying that in some ways Mangione did succeed in his mission. Or beyond killing a man, after the assassination, you saw a much more frank and open discussion about health insurance in the United States. And while there's been some time and you've seen certain sentiments of certain people shifting, Mangione has garnered a lot of sympathy from the public, with that appearing to be connected with seemingly almost every American having some sort of frustrating or horrible experience with health insurance in the country. Also, another place you saw an impact was with United Healthcare stock, because despite their CEO literally being the victim of an assassination, they're still the ones getting backlash from the attack. Right at the time, we saw people writing stuff like thoughts and deductibles to the family. Unfortunately, my condolences are out of network. And you have YouGov polls showing that the company's approval rating is down into the 30% range, which is the lowest since they've started tracking. With their stock then also taking a beating as the leadership there continues to wobble back and forth with various resignations. So much so that over the past 6 months, the value of United Healthcare Group, which is the parent company, is down over 40%, which is just an insane drop over that time frame, especially when you consider that at the time of Thompson's death, the company was making record profits. Though on that note, it slowed down since then, and back in April, you had leadership telling investors that growth was going to slow down. With that, then leading to a massive 22% drop in the stock price, and it wiped out $100 billion in value. You know, with all that said, for now, the main thing is, Mangione might be screwed if these writings are true and are his, since they would be a clear admission. But for now, we wait to see, and in the meantime, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts here. And then I've got more news for y'all in just a minute, but first, it's truly been awesome seeing you beautiful bastards win the $500 SeatGeek weekly giveaway and use it to hit up concerts, games, Broadway shows, just y'all living your best lives. Right? And SeatGeek, they're just a great service and a fantastic sponsor. And you should listen up because, the lineup now is stacked. Kendrick Lamar and SZA, Coldplay, Tyler the Creator, The Weeknd, Beyonce, Chris Stapleton. It's a wild time for live events. And if you haven't entered yet, what are you doing? It takes 2 seconds, and next week's $500 winner, it could be you. Right? And for the uninitiated, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app with over 28 million downloads. I mean, they've got tickets to over 70,000 events, sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it. And for you first-timers, download the app, scan the QR code, or, hit up the link in the description, and use code Phil for $20 off your first purchase. But then, and this is key, add code PDS to your SeatGeek account as well. That, it gets you $10 off of any ticket and enters you in for a chance to win the weekly $500 giveaway, no purchase required. So if you're a SeatGeek vet, you've used SeatGeek before, that applies to you as well. Just add code PDS to your account and you're in. And again, for everyone, scan the QR code or click the link below, use code Phil and PDS, and go make some memories. But then, next up today, we need to talk about that New York mayoral Democratic primary debate that happened last night.
We denied any
Mr. Cuomo, solutions to public education.
As you can tell, it was nice and orderly. Right, and while that's for a local election, it's an important snapshot of the current moment for the Democrats. Though I'll also say, while there were 9 Democrats up on stage, you could really argue that it was Andrew Cuomo versus everyone else, which makes sense because the former governor has enjoyed a double-digit lead over all the other candidates in nearly every poll so far. Plus, he's had wealthy donors pouring millions of dollars into his campaign, so naturally, everyone was ganging up on him.
It's not only that Andrew Cuomo lied to Congress, which is perjury, he also lied to the grieving families whose loved ones he sent into those nursing homes to protect his $5 million book deal.
The people who don't feel safe are young women, mothers, and grandmothers around Andrew Cuomo. That's the greatest threat to public safety.
The billionaires and the profitable corporations that Mr. Cuomo cares more about than working class New Yorkers?
Not the luxury developers that fund Andrew Cuomo's campaign.
But if one person did stick out from that group, it's got to be Zohran Mamdani, right? And he's a New York State representative, but he's also carved out a reputation as the most progressive candidate in the race, with him even calling himself a socialist. You know, he's been rising in the polls. AOC just endorsed him today, with her telling the New York Times that he has demonstrated a real ability on the ground to put together a coalition of working class New Yorkers at his strongest to lead the pack. Also hitting Cuomo, saying he belongs to the hedge funds and other wealthy interests. And all of this as, at first, Mamdani's success, it seemed like a long shot. But he's quickly shot to second place in the polls, largely thanks to an energetic social media campaign, support from young progressives, and an eye-catching policy platform. But among other proposals, he's got things like raising taxes on the rich, making city buses free, opening city-run grocery stores, and freezing rents for some tenants. And so what we saw is that he and Cuomo got heated at many points in this 2-hour debate, starting on the first topic, Donald Trump. Because with the ICE raids on immigrants, the suspension of federal funds, and the attacks on Columbia University, not to mention the DOJ's investigation into Cuomo, Trump's presence, it loomed large over the debate stage, with then each candidate trying to make the case that they were the best person to stand up to the president.
I am the last person on this stage that Mr. Trump wants to see as mayor.
I am Donald Trump's worst nightmare as a progressive Muslim immigrant who actually fights for the things that I believe in. And the difference between myself and Andrew Cuomo is that my campaign is not funded by the very billionaires who put Donald Trump in D.C.
Donald Trump would go through Mr. Mamdani like a hot knife through butter. He's been in government 27 minutes. He passed 3 bills. That's all he's done. He has no experience with Washington.
Look, it's true that I don't have experience with corrupt Trump billionaires who are funding my campaign. I don't have experience with party politics and insider consultants. I do have experience, however, with winning $450 million in debt relief for thousands of working class taxi drivers.
But pretty quickly, the focus shifted onto Cuomo himself and the myriad of scandals that he's dealt with over the years, starting with the accusation leveled by Republicans and some Democrats that his administration let COVID run rampant in nursing homes and then covered up the deaths.
Will you acknowledge the deaths?
Okay.
I mean, it's a very black and white.
Okay.
Did you lie to Congress, or will you acknowledge the death?
All right.
15,000 people died, and he still won't answer your question.
No, I told Congress the truth. No, we did not undercount any deaths. When they are all counted, we're number 38 out of 50.
Then you had the moderator pinning him down on a report that his government released at the time that was accused of undercounting deaths.
Just the question is, were you involved in the producing of that report? It's just a yes or no question.
I was very aware of the report. I spoke to it at press conferences.
No, before it was released,
times,
Mr. Cuomo. The question is about the production of the report.
All
right, okay, we're going to move on. We're not getting an answer.
Then you had Cuomo pressed on the sexual harassment allegations that led to him resigning. But instead of addressing that, he just talked about mental health and homelessness.
Every woman watching tonight, he was just given a chance to actually address the clear claims that were stated and ignored it.
And then finally, you had the moderator asking everyone if they had any personal regrets. And I emphasize personal there because Cuomo, he took the opportunity to lament how the Democratic Party as a whole let Donald Trump get elected and created people like Zohran Mamdani.
I said, I regret the state of the Democratic Party is
no
in
personal
that we
regrets.
elected Trump.
Not the 15.
No regrets when it comes to cutting Medicaid or health care. No regrets when it comes to cutting child care. No regrets when it comes to slow walking PPE and vaccinations in the season of COVID to black and brown communities. Really, no regrets.
It is just not accurate. Medicaid went up under me. I led the nation under COVID.
Also, I should know that Cuomo, he wasn't the only one getting targeted, right? One of the other candidates went after Mamdani as well.
That when a socialist like Zohran here tweets that the NYPD is, quote, wicked and calls to defund and dismantle the NYPD, that is madness, that is costing us elections. And it's why Trump has doubled his share of the New York City vote in the last 3 elections from 17% to 30%. We've got to move away from the far left and the socialism that's sinking our party and our city.
Brief response, Mr. Mamdani.
I want to be very clear that police have a critical role to play in creating public safety. And when I speak to those very officers on the beat, in the rank and file, I hear from them a frustration that where they joined the force to tackle serious crimes, we are instead now asking them to play the roles of mental health professionals and social workers.
You also had Cuomo jumping in to give his position on police reform.
Police. We wouldn't need more police if we didn't defund them in the first place. In my first 30 days, I will take every homeless person off the trains and the subway stations and get them the help they need.
Right, and then a standout is that when the moderator asked everyone where they would go for their first sworn visit as mayor, people gave answers like Canada, Colombia, the Caribbean, but then you had Cuomo saying Israel.
Given the hostility and the anti-Semitism that has been shown in New York, I would go to Israel.
So when Mamdani, as a critic of Israel, gave this rather unique answer,
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
it naturally invited the moderator to press him on whether he would visit Israel, to which he said he would meet and support Jewish constituents here in New York, but then she got even more specific.
There are concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
He won't,
Okay.
he
Not
won't
as a
say it
Jewish
has a
state.
right to exist as a Jewish state. Be very
And
clear
his
on
answer was no, he won't visit Israel.
But then we also saw them digging into more domestic issues like public education, for example.
We need to reform the education system. I would start with the DOE. They spend hundreds of $millions on consultants. We don't know what we get. I want a real analysis of the curriculum New York City solves and New York City reads. We need more paraprofessionals in those schools.
Now, as it pertains to public education, all of the challenges that we are facing in our city when it comes to our schools, they are also downstream from the fact that 500,000 of our children are going to sleep hungry every single night. 100,000 of them, for the 9th consecutive year, are now homeless.
They also touched on the cost of living, particularly housing affordability.
If you are one of the close to 2.5 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized housing, I will freeze your rent. And on top of this, we're going to build 200,000 truly affordable homes. We'll do this while taking on the very bad landlords and the real estate developers who are funding Andrew Cuomo's campaign. $2.5 million last time I checked.
With Cuomo then responding,
The Daily News said that his plan to finance his proposals, it violates the constitutional debt cap of the city of New York. It would double the state taxes, and there is no way the state is going to pass a tax statewide.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. We have to.
You know, with all that, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens because the primary itself is coming up on June 24th. I mean, that's just around the corner. And then after that, Eric Adams is going to be in the mix because he's in the general running as an independent. So, get your popcorn ready. More fireworks to come. But then next up from that, Donald Trump's travel ban is now back. And honestly, it's bigger than ever. With the White House now banning travel to the U.S. for citizens of 12 countries, as well as barring those from 7 others from settling permanently or even entering on tourist and student visas. And as far as who's affected here, the majority of countries are in Africa and the Middle East, and the rest are in South America, the Caribbean, and Asia. Right? And most of them, they're racked by conflict or ruled by repressive regimes, and more than half are also Muslim majority nations. And I point that out because, the first time that Trump tried something like this was back in 2017 when he banned travel exclusively from Muslim majority countries, 7 of them. Or with this coming after he had called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States during his campaign. And what we ended up seeing there were lawyers and activists immediately challenging the so-called Muslim ban in court, some judges blocking him, the administration then coming out with a couple of different versions, and ultimately the Supreme Court upheld the ban. But then, of course, Joe Biden became president and quickly ended that and many of Trump's other controversial immigration policies, which then, of course, have returned in full force with Trump and then some. A big thing here is that while we've seen much of Trump's current immigration agenda getting held up by judges, you have many experts here claiming that this latest version of the travel ban, it's more likely to withstand legal scrutiny than during his first term. With the seeing, for example, Stephen Vladeck, a professor at Georgetown University Law Center, explaining, they seem to have learned some lessons from the 3 different rounds of litigation we went through during the first Trump administration. Then also adding, a lot will depend upon how it's actually enforced and whether it's applied in ways that are themselves unlawful or even unconstitutional. And so with that, we should talk about specifics. Because the presidential proclamation detailing the ban, it says that it's about protecting the U.S. from what it calls terrorist attacks and other national security or public safety threats, with it then saying that the countries on the list lack sufficient vetting and screening processes to detect foreign nationals who may pose safety or terrorism threats to the U.S. And then it also claims that a country's information sharing policies, the presence of terrorists, visa overstay rates, and whether citizens who are sent back are readily accepted are all factors that play into the decision-making process. Though there, some have raised questions about whether the countries were chosen for other reasons as well, with CNN, for example, saying they're mostly nations with frosty, adversarial, or outwardly antagonistic relations with Washington. With then the West Africa bureau chief of the New York Times, for example, asking, why Chad, which at least held an election last year, albeit a highly scripted and disputed one, and not the 3 nearby countries ruled by military juntas, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and, which I'll add, also are dealing with terrorist groups. Also, you had the White House actually releasing a video of Trump announcing the travel ban that started with him talking about what happened in Boulder, Colorado over the weekend. Right? And we talked about it on the show. You had a guy yelling "Free Palestine," attacking a group gathering to raise attention for the hostages in Gaza with a makeshift flamethrower and Molotov cocktails. And luckily, no one died there, but it injured several, including a Holocaust survivor reportedly.
The recent terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, has underscored the extreme dangers posed to our country by the entry of foreign nationals who are not properly vetted, as well as those who come here as temporary visitors and overstay their visas. We don't want them.
Though I will say a notable thing is that the man charging the assault, he's actually an Egyptian national. In Egypt, it's not a country that's named in the new travel ban. You then also had organizations like the Cato Institute arguing that terrorism, as scary as it isn't actually all that big of a threat in the US, at least statistically. With also an analyst from the think tank writing after the announcement, a single terrorist from the countries on the list murdered one person in an attack on US soil, and adding the annual chance of being murdered by a terrorist from one of the banned countries from 1975 to the end of 2024 was about 1 in 13.9 billion per year. You know, with all that said and the debate continuing to play out online, here's the deal. The ban is going to go in effect on June 9th. And so as far as what else we know around this, the administration said that no immigrant or non-immigrant visa issued before the date will be revoked. Also, another big thing is that there are a number of exceptions. Things like, for example, US permanent residents, dual citizens, and athletes traveling to attend major sporting events. There's also carve-outs for adoptions, diplomats, and visiting officials, and even ethnic and religious minorities facing persecution in Iran. We're also seeing an exception for immediate family members with, quote, clear and convincing evidence of identity and family relationship, with the administration providing DNA as the only example of what might constitute this kind of evidence, which then sounded off alarms for some experts who said that there are concerns related to privacy and consent there, as well as people bring up the argument that not all families are biological. And then some news that's actually connected to that, you have ICE reportedly now planning to start collecting and uploading the DNA information of migrants, including children, to a national criminal database, something that one expert called a massive expansion of genetic surveillance, with rights groups absolutely slamming the plan as intrusive and privacy violating, and also expressing concern that this could be a way to separate children from non-parent adults who care for them. But I want to get back to the travel ban, because one final key exception that I should mention is for Afghan special immigrant visas. Right, those have been given out to people who helped the US government during the war in Afghanistan, which you have many saying is great, but also groups like Human Rights First claiming that other at-risk Afghans will be impacted by this hateful ban, and saying many are at grave risk due to the deteriorating conditions in country, and many have been waiting for years to reunite with loved ones in the United States. And all of that taken together resulting in Amnesty International saying that President Trump's new travel ban is discriminatory, racist, and downright cruel. The president of Oxfam America saying this policy is not about national security, it is about sowing division and vilifying communities that are seeking safety and opportunity in the United States. And finally, Adam Schiff saying bigotry is not a national security strategy. But for now, we'll have to wait to see how this plays out in the two courts. The real courts, and of course the court of public opinion. Though there, what I'd say is that something that stands out is the reaction to it now versus then. Because as you might remember, when the first Trump travel ban happened, it was the biggest news in the world at the time. You had lawyers and activists rushing to the airport in the middle of the night, people taken to streets. And now, it's being received with the energy of the fourth story down on a page. But there's so much happening at all times, the zone's getting flooded, people have news fatigue. But for now, we wait and we watch. But that is where today's show is gonna end. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you right back here on Monday, because I got a brand new show for you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Love you, mean it, bye.